Welcome back, everybody, to Tucked In Wizards, Episode 5. A little bit of a name change coming in for you.
Yeah, welcome back. The name change has to happen. It was really long.
Yeah.
Tucked into the Wizards Bed podcast. Anyway, today, the Wizards, obviously, they finished their season almost a week ago. Obviously, we're in the middle of the playoffs, but the exit interviews came out, so we want to talk about that, and then just update on the playoff picture where everyone's at right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, why don't we jump into talking about the playoffs a little bit. It's 3 games in pretty much all the series right now. I think the only one that has to get to 3 is Thunder Pelicans and Celtics Heat. Those are both going to be tonight. So we have a little bit of an idea of who's up in series. Some series I think we have an idea of who's going to win, and there's one series which I think we have an idea of the complete next round matchup.
Yeah, Nuggets are probably going to sweep the Lakers and the Timberwolves. I don't know if they'll sweep the Suns, but they're going to win that series.
Yeah, I don't think we really need to talk about those two that much.
We can't talk about how wrong we were in our playoff predictions about the Timberwolves. Yeah. That was our biggest miss, I think.
I think so. I think for me, it's less about the Timberwolves and more about the Suns. I didn't expect them to look this lifeless. When I was doing that prediction, I was basing it off of last year, where Booker and KD were able to win 2 games by themselves against the Nuggets.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, well, if they can do that, they're going to pop off this year. And then neither of them have played well, and Beal's been shit. And we fleeced the Suns.
We actually did. It was people are going back to the Beal contract, which, look, the Beal contract, when it happened, the only terrible thing I thought about it was the no trade clause. I was like, whatever, the money doesn't matter, who cares? But, the Suns cap is kind of screwed.
$57 million next season is insane.
Yeah, they definitely did us a solid getting off that.
Yeah, and honestly, the Warriors did us a solid by letting us move Chris Paul, who looked like he helped the Warriors a bit, but it wasn't enough. I think they would have liked Jordan Poole there more than him, honestly. Yeah. Draymond didn't punch him in the face.
As much as Warriors fans would tend to disagree. You want to talk about Nuggets a little bit? Because, we said it was going to be a sweep. I'm sure a lot of people said it was going to be a sweep. But we saw a lot of people who were like, no, LeBron can get 1. He hasn't gotten 1 in 11 games. Why is he going to get 1 now?
I told you this before the season started, but I was seeing everybody like Zach Lowe, Bill Simmons, all these people saying Nuggets in 6, which is funny because the Nuggets are still winning. But to me, that was very disrespectful because it's like the Lakers suck. And they match up really badly against the Nuggets. I think they could maybe win first-round matchup against some other teams. I think against Oklahoma, we would see
it would have been a much closer series. Yeah.
But Denver's Denver. Anybody not named the Wolves is going to get just fucking destroyed by them this year. And, they haven't even played that well yet. All the games I had watched, at that point, it was 8-0 against the Lakers. I hadn't seen anything that told me they could even win 1. And they had just about as perfect a game 2 as you can, and
still lost.
Win. So
yeah, that was insane to me that they lost that game. One of the things that stood out to me is AD. I heard this on members on the board is that they had 1 shot attempt in the fourth quarter, Anthony Davis, which is disgusting work by him. But
yeah, just getting into the little nitty gritty. This is the last thing I want to say about this series. I've really liked Coach Malone's adjustments compared to, of course, Darvin Ham. He's getting attacked. I don't think it's completely his fault that this team isn't up to par because the personnel is kind of bad. But Ham definitely hasn't been doing super well. But the specific adjustment I wanted to talk about that clamped Anthony Davis completely was they took they took Aaron Gordon off of LeBron and put him on AD, and then they switched around KCP onto LeBron and put Jokic on Rui, which I was really impressed with because, Jokic isn't a crazy defender. Rui's not that good of a three-point shooter.
We were talking about
to be too worried about guarding the
earlier,
perimeter.
too, and saying how it's like, damn, he's really the same player as he was year 1 with the Wizards still.
Yeah. And I'm seeing a lot of Lakers fans starting to realize that, and a lot of people in the comments below them being like, Wizards fans tried to warn y'all. But I really liked that change, and I think that's really what shows the Nuggets' versatility to me and why I think they're going to be able to, win the championship again this year, is that they have such versatile defenders that they can just switch matchups like this and really make the other teams have to react on the fly, kind of like how the Heat do.
Yeah.
Because not a lot of guards can guard LeBron. KCP is one of the few that can, And Anthony Gordon's so good against bigs that
Yeah.
you can, if you have a big cooking, I keep saying Anthony Gordon. If you have, Jokic getting cooked a little bit, like Anthony Davis was cooking him, you just put Aaron Gordon on him, and suddenly, like, he just can't play.
Yeah. So the next couple series, I don't want to spend too much time on it. The Thunder took commanding 2-0 lead against the Pelicans. The Pelicans looked really good in Game 1. And I watched that. They looked really good in Game 1. They couldn't close it out. And then the Thunder just made the adjustments and destroyed them in Game 2. One of the things that the Thunder did is Jonas Valanciunas was destroying them in the paint in that first quarter, and he did it in Game 1 also. And the Thunder were like, it doesn't matter if you're going to destroy us. We know you can't beat us for the whole game, and we're going to space you out so you can't play defense. And that's what they did. And, one of the big, negatives on the Thunder is like, oh, they're small. But, I mean, when Chet can space out the 5, if the 5 isn't versatile enough to play on the perimeter, it doesn't matter that they're small. They're still just going to out-offense you, and that's what they did in Game 2.
The only thing I have to say about the series is I just wish Zion was healthy.
Yeah, Zion
would be very interesting with Zion.
Because Zion
I don't
really
think he's very
fits
interesting without him.
Into that.
Yeah, he does.
Like, one of my weakness of the Thunder, where he can just bully his way.
He's a walking mismatch for the Thunder for sure. Yeah. But, he's not healthy, so I think this is going to be I think it might even be a sweep.
It's possible. 4-5 Clippers, Mavs. Mavs look good. Mavs look really
good. Real good. Mavs look really good.
And the Clippers look real bad since Kawhi's been back.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
We have a friend who's a Clippers
I just didn't. Yeah. I kind of expected this. I know we picked them to go to the conference finals, but I think whoever wins the series is going to the conference finals either way. But I don't know. I'm always down on the Clippers. Like last year, everyone was picking to make the conference finals, and I was like, they're not even making out of the first round, which they didn't. So I guess I should have been expecting this year. I just thought that with the Harden and Westbrook additions, I was really high on Westbrook, and he's been very good for them.
Not last game.
The only problem... No, not last game. But, he provides that energy.
Yeah. He made
that kind of
funny enough, the last game before they actually showed his stat line, I thought he was like kind of being a pain, Mavs side on the defensive end, and then they showed him on the line. He was like 0 for 6. I was like, oh.
That's the thing with Westbrook. I'm kind of, especially in this role, I'm kind of on the side of like the MIT Westbrooks of the world, where it's like, he impacts so much more than his scoring that I don't mind him having a bad scoring game. And that's a little different from when he was a max contract player to now, because he's making like nothing. So I think now if he goes like 0 for 6 but gives you good defense, I don't think you can give a shit.
Yeah.
Like I think that's all.
It's just a give and take.
Yeah. And I've loved what he's done for the Clippers, his willingness to move to the bench and do whatever's needed for the team. We've always seen that from him. The only place we haven't seen that from him, there were a lot of outside factors that people are starting to realize. And I've even seen some Lakers fans like, man, I think we scapegoated Russ a bit too much. We suck without him too.
Yeah, it's like the same. I mean, I guess they're actually making the playoffs, but still. We'll see if the Clippers can get back in that series in Game 4 on Sunday. Out east, the Heat actually took a game against the Celtics, which is crazy.
Yep.
They shot 55% from 3. Caleb Martin continues to kill the Celtics.
The fourth
Tyler
most
Hero,
threes in NBA history.
Yeah, he hit 5 threes that game.
Yeah.
I don't think the Heat are going to win the series, but it is really funny seeing fans of the Celtics saying, oh, they're not going to shoot like that for 4 games. And it's like, that literally happened last year. They literally shot like that for 4 games.
Not like that. They set a franchise record and won by 6 points.
Yeah, no.
They've never hit that many threes.
But hey, the Bucks were saying that too. But no, they're not going to win the series.
No, they're not going to win the series. I think it's still going to be Celtics in 5.
Yeah.
This really reminds me of 2021 when the Magic won Game 1 against the Bucks and everyone freaked out, and then the Bucks won the championship. I honestly think I'm of the opinion that this loss was extremely good for the Celtics. They need something like this, especially against a team like the Heat. They need something to light a fire under their ass. Because, honestly, this narrative of them being playoff chokers is very new. They've consistently shown up in the playoffs, especially the top players. Everyone's talking about Tatum being a choker, but, he's got the most points in Game 7 in the history of the NBA. He swept KD when everyone thought that he had a chance to make the finals. He's consistently making the conference finals or finals. I just don't understand why he's getting this
Yeah, I don't
reputation.
know.
I do get that he's on a better team, so he needs to sacrifice his own offense for the benefit of the team, and I do agree that he might be even doing that a bit too much. But like the Celtics are still a generational team. I think they're if unless they like completely collapse mentally, they should be able to just crush the Heat here. And I think today we're gonna see a big statement game
Yeah,
from
I
them.
think they're gonna win by a good amount today.
I'm not concerned unless they lose today. If they lose today, I'm pressing the red panic button a little bit. But if they win today, I'm like,
Yeah, it's
handling business as usual.
exactly.
The Celtics always they always kind of struggle with closing out opponents, so I'd like them to finish it in 5.
It's the
Wouldn't be
inconsistency.
too surprised if it goes to 6.
The inconsistency
Yeah.
of Tatum is what gets labeled, which it's an unfair label because he has been pretty
He's
amazing
25,
in the playoffs.
26.
But he has been very inconsistent over the course of his career. But he still kind of shows up when it matters, so that's what's important, except for the finals.
Find me one player in the league that's more consistent than Tatum and is the same age or younger.
I mean, Luka.
Besides Luka, that's different because Luka and Jokic are
Probably
up
Shea.
there.
I would say.
They're the exact same age.
You said the same age or younger.
Shea's older. I'm pretty sure Shea's 26 and a half or something. Let me see.
I would say even
How old
Jaylen
is
Brown's
Shea?
more consistent, but he's a little older.
Yeah, I think Shea and Tatum are pretty much the exact same age. I just think Tatum gets so unfairly lambasted because he's providing you better defense than all of these other guys. Luka's not defending.
Shea was an all-defensive guy. So
I think Tatum should be an all-defensive guy too, though. I think he gets underrated on the defensive end. I'm really of the opinion that somehow he's been getting underrated recently, because of unfair playoff labels because of injuries, and he never gets the benefit of the doubt that other players do with injuries, like Giannis, Jimmy Butler, all those guys are their fan base is oh, they were injured, and people are
Embiid.
not, yeah, especially Embiid gets such a pass for being injured, and it's
We'll segue that to the next
Tatum.
series, too.
Tatum put 51 on Embiid's head last year, and people are I don't know. I don't get it. I think he's going to have a big playoff series. I think he's been kind of struggling learning how to play with a team this good and this balanced. But I think they're going to have a conversation with him after last game, or they should, which is this is your team. Step up.
Yeah, the expectations are
lead
just a
us
little
to-
higher for Tatum than it is for most players in the NBA, just because of the success he's had.
Which I think is kind of unfair. LeBron even talked about it. LeBron is I don't know how this guy is so underrated. He's
Yeah.
an extremely good player. If LeBron says that about you, you're a good player.
Yeah.
I don't give a fuck what anyone else says.
LeBron is pretty good at this basketball team. We want to go to Knicks Sixers because it's been a really good series. I've loved.
This is my
favorite
series
series
so
of the
far.
playoffs because you've had
This has been entertaining.
first of all, both fan bases have been going at each other.
Oh, yeah.
It's
I knew that was
great.
going to happen.
And then you have a missed call in game 2. You got a lot of physical play in game 3. I'm not going to talk about Embiid pulling Robinson down. Let's just not get into that at all. But
No, I'm just going to say it's dirty.
Yeah.
That's all. I'm just going to leave it there.
Physical play in game 3. The Sixers close it out. They go on a crazy run in the third quarter, and it's setting up. I think this series is going to go 6 or 7 for sure.
Yeah, definitely. If the Sixers win tonight, or sorry, if the Knicks, they play tonight, right? If the Knicks win, sorry, no, they don't. If the Knicks win tomorrow, I think the Sixers are going to panic a little bit. I don't know if Embiid has the legs to go to a 7-game series, because he was incredible last game, but
He was incredible. 50 points.
he was
He made,
a
like,
jump
every shot.
shooter last
Yeah.
game. I don't know if he can drive to the rim anymore. I think it all depends on Mitchell Robinson too. I hate the narrative that Embiid 100% injured him, but I can't argue with it completely.
It was pretty bad
And
when you look at it.
it was pretty bad. And he kicked him in the balls later. And he fell on his ankle trying to go for a loose ball, which that's a basketball play.
Yeah, that's
say whatever you want about the other one. That's a basketball play. You can't say much about that. I'm personally biased against the Sixers just because I love to hate them. I don't think they've played incredibly well this series. I also think the Knicks haven't played incredibly well this series. It's just a scrappy dogfight. And I do
Which
want to
is
talk about
great.
Game 2 just real quick. That shit wasn't rigged. The Sixers had a million chances to close that game out, and they just choked.
Yeah.
Maybe there was a missed call. I will agree with that. Officiating was a little iffy towards the end. Nick Nurse did not call a timeout. And, at the end of the day, if you're up 20 and you lose by the last shot, that wasn't the refs.
Yeah.
That was your incompetence.
Yeah, I would have to agree. And just the Sixers, they need more from the other guys. I mean, they got 75 combined points from Embiid and Maxey this game, which is nuts. But also, they got performances from Kelly Oubre, who had 15, and from Cam Payne, who had 11. They need one guy to step up like that. It's not going to be Tobias Harris, because we've seen that. So someone else needs to do it.
And the Knicks are like kind of a committee. Like, they're going to beat you all together. Yeah. So you need that for sure.
Even when Brunson had a bad game, they were winning. So last two series, Bucks Pacers. It's a little concerning for the Bucks now. They just lost game 3.
For sure.
Dame was a little hobbled. Chris Middleton went crazy though.
Yeah.
A little bit
entertaining
concerning for the Bucks. I still think if they win Game 4, they could pull this out. Depends on what Giannis's timeline is a lot. Because if Giannis is here, then I don't know if the Pacers can win another game. Oh, well, they can because they have, but it's a lot harder, obviously.
If they can delay till Game 6 or Game 7 and Giannis comes back in one of those games, I think they can win.
Yeah. If
they lose this next game, I think it's going to be really tough for them.
And when
I think this is a make or break game.
When we were making the predictions, we assumed that Giannis would be playing, and I was right after we made that, we got the news that Giannis is going to be out for most of the first round. So just some insight on that. And then Cavs Magic, I don't really have a lot to say about this series because I haven't watched a ton of it, mainly because a lot of the games, all of the games have been blowouts, with the Magic beating them by almost 50.
The only thing I have to say is Paolo is here.
He's here.
He's ready. He's taken the step. He's matured. I saw an article the other day where he got all the players together after game 2, and he said, "Hey, I'm with you guys. We're in this together. We're winning together. We're losing together. Whatever it takes." And then he comes out and has a game like that. That's a leader right there. That's the type of thing that really encourages your team to join you in that. Like they're seeing you struggle. You want this, and they want to do it with you. So I've been very impressed by the Magic. I picked them to win the series. I'm not confident that they're going to win the series after the first 3 games. But I think this is a very important series for them going forward, especially Paolo.
Yeah.
And I think this is going to be very good for them. I think they're going to really come out running out of the gate next year.
Yeah. And one thing that the Cavs need Garland to step up because he hasn't been good this playoffs. He wasn't good last playoffs. And they need his production, not only to close out this series, but to also then be competitive in their next series as well. But the Magic, they look good in Game 3. We'll see how they look here in Game 4 back in Orlando, which I'm excited to watch that in about an hour.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch it too. Just a little bit, if either Cleveland or Orlando win this and Boston beats the Heat, I think it might be a thing last year where Boston faces their hardest opponents in the first round like the Nuggets did. And I think that is not going to be a very competitive game. But if the Heat win this series, I think it would be a very fun series to watch the Cleveland or Magic against the Heat. Yeah. But, maybe
the Magic
Boston
play the Celtics well, but,
Yeah, they do. The Magic do play the Celtics well.
That'll be a dog.
Everything hinges on Porzingis. Yeah, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that later.
All right, now enough of the boring playoff stuff. Let's get to what everyone was here for, which is the exit interviews for the 15 and 67 Wizards or whatever their record was.
So do you want to? So how we did it was we watched the Winger and Dawkins one a bit together, and then we watched the other ones. We split it up a bit so we can kind of each talk about it.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to start talking about Jordan Poole.
Do you want to start with Winger and Dawkins first?
Yeah, actually, that's probably a good idea since we both watched that one.
Yeah.
I was pretty impressed with what I saw from Winger and Dawkins. They were, kind of said similar things the whole time of we view the season as a success, even though the record wasn't obviously successful. They really emphasized the individual improvement they saw. They said every player on the roster improved at least somewhat. And they were very impressed with the competitiveness that Brian Keefe was able to instill in them throughout the season. And one of the interesting tidbits that I saw that kind of came up immediately was they were asked about Poole versus Tyus and how they were going to figure that out. And the way that they were talking about it really made it sound like Tyus Jones is going to be back next year. They were talking about how they need to figure out how they can let Poole and Tyus both handle the ball and both be in roles they're comfortable with and excel in, and kind of figuring out how they coexist together in a way where it kind of sounded like they had talked to Tyus and this is a done deal. So I would be glad to see him back. I would be happy to see them figure something out with Poole and Tyus because I think Tyus has a lot that he can teach Poole. And also vice versa. I think Poole has a lot he can teach Tyus. Because one of Tyus' greatest strengths is assist-to-turnover ratio and really keeping the ball handled. And that's something that I think Poole struggles with a bit right now. So I think getting an entire offseason to work with him under this new development team is really going to help him.
Yeah, and I watched the Tyus Jones one, and first of all, he wasn't asked at all about his pending free agency, which I thought was a little weird, but he kind of had the similar thing where it did kind of seem like he was coming back. Like we talked about it, how there's not many places in the NBA where he would be a starter right now, and the Wizards are one of them. And that's something that he wants to be. He talked about adjusting to and how he really liked being a starter. And he had his best season as a starter, and that he talked about Michael and Will's approach every day, their professionalism, and how it just seemed like he was going to be back and he was going to be a Wizard next year. We'll see if that actually happens, but.
I suspect he might be on like a shorter deal, maybe 1 or 2 years, maybe 2 years with like a player or team option. But like you said, there's not many places he can start, and I think they're kind of selling him on the idea of like, hey, you saw how we improved this year, and it's like you're in a pretty good spot. They talked about how the locker room was pretty good, and everyone was getting along with each other. So I'm sure that makes it easier to come back to a spot like this where it's going to be kind of bad, but they're like, hey, we're improving. If you stay with us next year, you're going to start. You're going to have the ability to showcase those skills. And if we get off to a decent start, you're going to, get paid next year or be able to go to pretty much wherever you want. So I think that's going to be important for Tyus.
That wouldn't be.
He's always been very vocal.
Deal, honestly, how old is he?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that's true. He might want to lock down something. But I think he might also be betting on himself because right now he's not viewed as a starter around this league. And I think he has the capability to be viewed like that, especially for teams like Minnesota, maybe. Like Mike Conley's very good for them, but he's getting old, and he does a lot of the similar things that Mike Conley does, which a lot of teams value. I think the Suns could really use him.
The Suns could really use him. In fact, Suns fans are talking like they would rather have tried to go for him over Beal, which I
think that could have been smart. Yeah, I think that could have been good for them, or even. Like we were talking about during these exit interviews, even going for Poole instead of trying to trade for Beal. I think that was a terrible trade that, Wizards fans all around the world are breathing a sigh of relief watching these playoffs. Like, thank God we didn't keep Beal another year. And I think this really vindicates
Beal's
on the business side. I love Beal, but it's clear that he's not who he used to be, and the NBA's kind of changed in ways that he's not able to maybe keep up with. And I think this really vindicates. He just doesn't have the explosiveness he used to. Plus, he's not in the same role where he's able to showcase those talents, and he's been okay on the defensive end. But like I was saying, I think this really vindicates Ted's decision to embrace the tank and hire some guys that are willing to steer us in the right direction. Because he's watching this and being like, "Oh, we wouldn't have done anything with this guy anyway." So we might as well be in the spot where we have the potential to get guys that can really elevate us to maybe even a championship. That's the goal.
Yeah, and that's what Dawkins talked about. Just want to talk about Winger. The things that he really enjoyed seeing out of the team is there was a lot of individual player development that was positive, and we'll talk about Kispert and Benny a little bit later. But also, they were in a lot of games, and just based off the eye test, I was thinking like they were kind of in a lot of games this year. And he was talking like 60% of the games they were in, 60% of the games. Yeah, 6 points or less in the final 2 minutes, and that's something that like they weren't getting blown out a ton. Still getting blown out a little bit, but they're a bad team. It is what it is. And then the second half of the season, they almost won 50% of their halves. So some improvements. Yeah, and a lot better than the beginning of the season for sure.
For sure. And I liked the kind of like angle he was approaching it from, where he was saying like, these individual improvements from these players have resulted in us being able to stay in these games. Now the work is this whole offseason to both, continue that individual improvement, but really focus on roster improvement as a whole and focus on like playing better as a team. The way he put it was like individual improvement has let us stay in these games. The next step for us is working as a team to be able to win them.
To close it out.
Which I think that's exactly what you want to hear from your GM. Like just slow incremental progress, building the foundation for success. Like they said, this is not going to happen quick. This is not an overnight process. This is a long, arduous process at times that really requires a lot of work from the entire organization. And from what it sounded like, they've communicated that very clearly to their players. Like, hey, not that we don't expect anything from you. We don't expect you to be able to close these yet. We don't expect you to be looking like an NBA playoff team. But we want to see this improvement, and we want to see the effort put in.
And there's no tolerance for not making those improvements. Like,
yes,
or at least
I love to see, as a longtime Wizards fan, suffering through these last 10 years. I love that. Clear communication. Hey,
I would
we
say
just want you to
6
improve.
years.
But
pretty good
not 6 years. They were good 10 years ago. Not we want you to improve, but like we expect improvement. And they were very clear about that doesn't have to be on the court improvement. You know, a lot of the like practice improving in practice, improving in the weight room, improving on the go.
Yeah.
Wherever it comes, they just want to see some improvement.
And keeping up those habits.
Yes. It just seems like they're really committed to building this long-term culture and doing it the right way, which they've always been very vocal about, but it's good to see their actions following what they've been saying.
Mm-hmm. And I know Winger talked about continuing this roster, everyone improving together individually and in the team, which we kind of touched on. Dawkins had some points, but what were you saying?
Yeah, I was just gonna say one last thing I wanted to say that I was impressed with was that both Winger and Dawkins said that this season was very valuable because it taught them the type of culture that they want to build, and they learned a lot about how to implement that culture, which is interesting to me because that shows that they didn't come in with a clear idea of what exactly they wanted to do, which to me is a good thing. I think the biggest key in the NBA is adaptability. The best team with the best player in the world right now is extremely adaptable. That's what they're built around. They can play really however way they want to. Mm-hmm. And I think that is important to instill at an organizational level. And, you know, as Winger said, the Wizards are number one in moral victories this year. Most moral victories across the league. So
that was really funny when he said that. They're stacking the moral victories. And then he said that he was talking about get better season. He was like, yeah, you know, you're going to be really good in June. Take a dip in July and then get back up. We were like, why are they taking a dip in July?
Why do we have to take a dip? Why can't we just go up? But I think that also shows like a good perspective they have of like, you know, this isn't 2K. We're not just going to get better.
Yeah.
You know? But as long as we're putting the work in, he got emotional about how much work Jordan Poole puts in and how Jordan Poole continuously told them like in a very mature way, like, hey, I'm struggling right now. I'm putting the work in. The work is going to pay for itself. Mm-hmm. I'm going to improve. Yeah. And he said, you know, he went out and did it through one hell of a slump, one of the biggest slump I've seen recently in the NBA. And to be able to do that and really show the type of character that you have, I think that's very important to show guys like Winger and Dawkins. And that really showed me. I think Poole's going to be here long term, if not permanently. And, you know, we'll talk about him later, but from what I heard in the press conference, I'd love for him to stick around. I really think he has the right perspective.
Yeah, the Poole thing is, like, not unheard of, but almost, like, it's definitely one of the bigger turnarounds where at the beginning of the season we were like, I don't even know if this guy is, like, not an NBA talent, because he obviously is, but, like, can really contribute anything. To the end of the season where it's like, okay, this guy, he's going to keep improving. He's going to be on the Wizards for a long time. And it was probably a mental thing for him as well. You know, you come from the Warriors. You have to play in a new city, you know, new expectations. But
well, I'll talk a bit about it when I talk about Poole. Obviously, you didn't
want to just talk about it now?
Interview. Yeah, sure. We can just jump into it. I pretty much... The only thing I want to say about... this leads into Poole. The last thing I want to say about Winger and Dawkins. They said... Poole's a workhorse. Poole is a gamer. He's really going to go out there, do the work.
I wonder what games he plays. Also, they talked about escaping mediocrity, which I know Wizards fans have been wanting for years, and Bulls fans still want that.
Yeah, yeah. What I was really impressed with them was that they said they came in with the perspective of like these exit interviews are going to be kind of tough for us. We're going to get kind of lambasted by these players, and they were very pleasantly surprised to see all the players very receptive to what's been going on and being like, "Hey, this was a great year for us, no matter what the record showed."
Mm-hmm.
And they were very grateful for that and like being very humble, which I think really resonates with the players. And one thing that they really pointed out was like a lot of the players, both in their exit interviews and privately, expressed like, I've never been treated like this before by my front office. Like, I've never seen an organization care about me to this level, which I think is very important in the modern NBA. Players are people. They want to be shown that, you know, this is somewhere where I can feel safe, somewhere that's going to take care of my family, somewhere that's going to do what's best for me, whether that's, you know, if I need to be traded, trading me, giving me more opportunities, you know, communicating with me what they expect from me. And I think that's a big step because that's ultimately how you're going to get players here. I think DC has the potential to be a bigger market than it is currently. It's a great place to live. A lot of players love living here. Kuz has talked about how much he loves living here. He's spending the summer in DC. It's a beautiful area. You know, there's a lot of really cool stuff going on, and it's a historic organization. We've won a chip. There's teams that haven't been able to say that. We're in a really cool location, you know, next to
Decently
in the middle of DC. We're right across from an art museum. Like, it's and DC's a very cool city. It's a sports city. It's willing to engage with their players. I know John Wall was at Rose Bar every single night, win or lose, and the community really welcomes that and is very receptive to that. And this is an area where there's a lot of work to be done. Like how Kuz has been showing, like he's been very vocal about being active in both his Michigan community and the DC community, which I love to see.
Yeah. No, I love that as well. And same with Winger. You know, you talk about the players wanting to be there and how they treat them, and then at the same time on the business side, Winger isn't afraid to make those tough calls and make those trades. I mean, we've seen that with when he was talking about Tobias Harris when he first came to the Wizards, where he was like, Tobias was like loved by everyone, but like this was the move that we needed to make. They had to make.
Yeah, talking about like the
it's two sides. Yeah, two sides.
Yep. All right. I'm gonna move on to Jordan Poole. The first question that he got asked was Brian Keefe versus. They didn't say Wes Unseld, but you know it was implied versus Wes Unseld. And he was like, yeah, just big shout out to BK. He really like allowed me to play the game the way that I know I can positively affect the game in ways that like it was not terrible under Wes Unseld, but he was just being used as like a traditional point guard under Wes Unseld.
You mean not a traditional point, like an off-ball guy, because he's
yeah. Sorry, yeah, he was trying to use him like a little bit like Steph Curry.
Yeah.
Like you run around without the ball, you get the ball, you shoot the ball, or you pass away. And that's not Jordan's game. He played with Steph, but he's not obviously Steph Curry. He likes taking those kind of Steph shots, but he needs the ball in his hands to be able to impact the game. And as we saw from the end of the season, when he has the ball in his hands, he's able to make those decisions. And he has facets to his offensive game that really opens up his playmaking, where like teams have to respect his 3-point shooting, they have to respect his drives. He's a good mid-range shooter. Like he can really do it all to the point where like we can see defenses collapse and really focus on him. And that's kind of the next thing that he was talking about was like having to adjust to the number one defenders being put on him, the best players against, you know, like the Kawhis of the world. He's talking about these lengthy defenders that used to really bother him, and now he's had to learn how to play around that length and deal with that length. And one thing that I thought was interesting that he really talked about was like it was hard for him to open up the court and find space because defenses were treating him like the number one option, and you know he would beat his man and then immediately run into the big man in the paint. And he was like, that was something that I had never seen before, was teams playing me to that extent. Because, like, you know, say what you will about his time as a number one option in Golden State, but he always had Steph, he always had Wiggins, or sorry, not Steph, Clay. He always had these players that he was able to, you know, distribute to, and that defenses had to be scared about working off of.
That defense is respected,
Exactly. Like at the beginning of the season, they didn't feel that way about Kuzma, Denny, Kispert, where maybe that might be part of it. At the end of the season, they kind of proved they needed that attention defensively. But he was like, that was something that was very tough for me. And he was like, I felt like at the end of the season, I was able to find space on the court without forcing things in ways that he wasn't able to even see at the beginning of the season, which I thought was a huge improvement.
And his playmaking has improved so much, just like watching.
Mm-hmm.
Like so many great passes he's making. I mean, I'm excited for Poole next year. Yeah,
I'm excited too. I think this offseason is going to be a lot of figuring out how to really unlock Poole in this offense, and I think we're going to see a lot more developed offense next year. I expect the coaching change to be done before probably July or even maybe before the draft, just so we can, establish a consistent offensive and defensive scheme.
Yeah.
And speaking about the coaching search, one interesting thing that I thought was they asked Jordan Poole, so ideally you don't have to give a name, but
they asked everyone that. We'll go through that for each person too.
Yeah, but like, what do you personally want from a coach? What type of characteristics, what type of actions do you want a coach to take? And he immediately went, I think BK's been doing a great job. He said, I love how BK's instilled that competitiveness in us. He's really brought us together as a group. He's very clear and consistent with what he wants from us in the court. And he said that BK, he didn't say compared to Wes Unseld, but the implication was there. He was able to figure out how to get the most out of his players and how to utilize them the best on the court. So it sounds like Jordan Poole wants Brian Keefe back. You know me, I've been higher on Brian Keefe than most, especially some you'll see on Reddit and Twitter and stuff. But I think one of the important things that Kuzma actually said about a coach is like, he's like, in a point like this for the organization, we don't need a coach who's going to give us like perfect X's and O's and give us these like he didn't say like out of timeout plays, but like these specific plays on the court. He said, I want a coach that connects with me on a human level. I know that they care about me. They're good at managing egos. And they're good at like, just building that relationship with the player that makes the player want to play hard for them. And I think Brian Keefe has the potential for that. But like I said, like I've been saying really this whole time, if it's Brian Keefe or not, I'm going to be 100% behind whatever this front office chooses. They've said the right things and now they've done the right actions. I'm behind them 100% of the way. I think Winger and Dawkins is really the future. And I think a lot of the players, from what I've seen from these exit interviews, are really buying into that idea of like, hey, we're moving in the right place. We're building something special here. This is, we're doing the right process.
Yeah. And that's something you love to see. One thing that is to be a note, because he was an interim coach, regardless of if he's a head coach or not, he'll probably be back as at least an assistant next year, which is good to see.
And he's definitely built those relationships.
Yeah. I'll talk about Kispert a bit, one of Poole's floor spacers. He talked about up and down season, but a lot of things, and a lot of the players talked about this, is they had a lot of fun. They loved coming into work, and that's such a testament to the front office and Winger and Dawkins. I know you talked about a little bit before we got on about Kuzma and the difference between this front office and the last one, and then also comparing it to the Lakers one is like night and day, where like this one is closer to the Lakers one than the last one ever was. So
cool I'll talk more in specific about that when we talk about Kuz.
Yeah.
But I had one little thing I want to say about Kispert. Jordan Poole talked about how he's really worked closely with Kispert this year and understood more about how to communicate with him and what Kispert wants to do. In ways that like he seems like he's really developing a two-man game with Kispert, which I would love to see.
But it's great because they're both really good floor spacers. But Kispert talked about not only his time, he's now being able to be this vocal leader, which is really nice, especially on the defensive end, which is probably why his defense is much improved. His communication's a big part of that. But also, like, just improving mentally. Like, he's letting go of mistakes that he might not have let go, his rookie season or his second season. Apparently his wife also played basketball at Gonzaga, so she drills him, like, every night. That's what he was talking about, which is crazy. Talking about their great vibes in the locker room. I wish I watched Anthony Gills. I bet he had something to say about that. But he also believes, everyone got a little bit better this year. And he also talked about, like, and I mean, I think you could always add stuff to your game, but he talked about this offseason really honing in on his the things that he's really good at and just getting even better at those things. So using his body effectively, like he doesn't need to put on too much weight, but he needs to use it effectively to continue to improve and continue to improve his shots at the rim, his shots from the mid range. So I don't know. Kispert seems like he's going to improve, even if it's not, a generational improvement. He's going to improve going into next season.
For sure. And I think that's kind of a product of this clear and consistent communication across the board that everyone's talked about. Like, I think Kuzma talked about how everybody communicates across the entire organization. Coaches are talking to, medical staff. He said they get together in like a big group of like 13 people, and they all discuss what they want from the players, what specific steps they need to take to recognize, improvements on the court, and really get everybody on the same page. And I think that allows players like Kispert to go, oh, I don't need to be, 100% good at everything I do on the court, but this is what is expected of me, and this is what I need to work on.
A small improvement. I mean, he already shot so well at the rim this year, so he just needs to continue building into that. He talked about making himself a threat off the dribble, where teams their job isn't done on defense when he puts the ball on the floor now. Like, they actually have to try to guard him, where before, like, his rookie and sophomore year is like, okay, the defenses just had to force him off the three-point line. And it's something that Duncan Robinson made a big shift into this year, where it's like, once you force him off the three-point line, he could actually make a play on the drive, and that's what Kispert is doing as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely been seeing that from him this year. He's been, like, very improved going to the rim in ways that, like, someone must have sat him down and, like, it's kind of an obvious thing, but, like, been like, look, like, obviously if you improve at the rim, you're going to space the floor better and be able to get more three-point shots. But I think he's able, like, I think they were communicating, like, don't be afraid to do that. I think it's an organizational thing, too, where it's like, hey, we need you to do this. This isn't something where, like, oh, I don't feel comfortable doing this, so I'm going to pass out.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter if you're comfortable or not. You got to do this for us to be successful.
Yeah.
And, credit to him, I think he really stepped up and went, okay, if I have to do this, I got to improve in these ways. And then he went out and did it. I love Kispert. He's going to be on this team for a long time, I think.
I think so. He's coming up for a contract extension next year, I believe, is his year that he needs to decide. So we'll see. I'm sure
out of him this year, then.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get an extension. If we don't get an extension, we'll get a trade. So we'll see.
I don't see there's no reason to not extend him. He's
at this point, yeah. I don't
he's
think
impactful
unless he like really falls off, or they really think like, oh, we can get someone else. But they preach continuity, so. I think we'll see him back. I'm going to real quick talk about Denny and Bilal before you get into Kuzma, because their exit interviews are pretty short. Denny believes that the franchise sees him as a cornerstone, which is really cool. I think the franchise should see him as a cornerstone, and one of probably not the number one, but the 2 or 3, which would be really, really good. Even a 4, like Aaron Gordon role. He talked about the team being very supportive of him, and all the players really talked about that, and we continue to harp on it. Everyone's kind of happy to be in Washington, which is nice to see. We haven't always seen that as Wizards fans, even though we're going through this rebuild. It's fun to kind of work, and he wanted a coach that holds people accountable. It's kind of what he was talking about. Denny didn't really say anything that interesting. One of the things he did talk about was team defense, because he was like, it was like the one negative thing I heard any of the players say, and it was, they didn't make the strides defensively that they wanted to over the course of the year, and that's true. Their defense was terrible. I'm going to be honest, it was awful. So
it was really bad.
Taking accountability is nice to see. Bilal, they didn't really go 2 and 2. He's about to take the cast off on his hand, so he'll be back to work in the off season. He talked about his left hand being big because his cast was on his right, so he was learning how to use his left hand a lot, which was
good lesson.
Yeah, good lesson, I guess. Good thing to come out of the injury. Off season, creating his own shot and getting his shot up quicker. His shot was so slow. That was one of the big things that I thought he needed to improve, was getting the shot up quicker, because man, his shot was slow. He was hitting them, but his shot was slow. And he's gonna play. He's hoping to get a French invite. We'll see if he plays at the Olympics. Like,
I think he's expected to.
Yeah, I think he will. So it'd be cool to see him at the Olympics. Other than that, I mean, he really doesn't have a lot to like go off of. It's just his first season, so it's not like he has the the previous seasons to kind of know what's different this year than was last year that the other players do.
Plus, he got injured right before he was going to be given a much bigger role. So
Yeah.
there's not a lot to talk about because it's like, he improved. There's stuff to work on. That's
Exactly.
about
It's just kind of basic rookie stuff. One of the things I thought was really funny that he said was he was like, "Yeah, before I got to the NBA, everyone was telling me how like bigger and stronger everyone was, but I was just fitted right away on the defensive end." I was like, "Okay, that's pretty cool, I guess."
Hey, Johnny Davis said nobody can get by. So.
And if Johnny Davis can't get by someone, no one can.
I really like to hear that Denny was told, like, it was kind of out in the air, like, hey, we value you enough to want to build our future around you.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that might be a reason why he really blossomed this year. It's like, hey, like, we're
And he
gonna
got
give
the
you the freedom
extension.
to be you. And you got the extension, and it's like, we want you here. We're communicating very publicly, like, you are valued. We expect you to develop well. We know you're going to be a good player. Go out there and show us that you have the capability to do it. And he did. He really showed that he has the potential to be a building block for us going forwards in this rebuild. In a way that, I'm not going to say that I expected, but it's just refreshing to see that from a guy with those expectations. Like, especially compared to a guy like Rui, where, he was also given those kind of lofty expectations, but obviously not communicated as well, and wasn't able to put it together.
It was such a weird situation with Rui, where like he was given those expectations, but also we had Beal, we had Porzingis. Or I guess we didn't have Porzingis at the time, but we had Beal, and it was kind of like, okay, Beal's the franchise guy. You just need to be like this role player. And then I feel like Wizards fans kind of put an unrealistic expectation on him to kind of blossom into a second star or even a first star when I don't know. From the first couple of seasons, it was clear that he wasn't going to be that.
He's not even a fifth or sixth man on the Lakers, though.
Hey, he's starting on the
Lakers.
Lakers. To be that. But yeah.
Yeah, but
no, I get what you're saying though.
Playing well, I don't know.
We'll have to go back and look at that draft, see what the Wizards missed. But I still, he looked good his rookie season. He looked really good, and in that playoff series with Westbrook, he also looked really good.
He looked really good. Yeah.
It's just weird.
He's just so inconsistent. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But I'm just gonna jump into Kuz. Yeah.
The last one.
So I really, really liked Kuz's interview because it's very clear that he's not just willing to take the steps to become a leader, but that he's fully embracing it. He had a lot of really good comments to say. He had one of the longest ones. He had a 20-minute exit interview where most of them were 10 minutes or less, besides Winger and Dawkins. But it started with a lot of just Kuz stuff. Like he's talking about how he really fell in love with working hard to get to the next step in a way that he wasn't able to before, which I think is interesting. He talked about how internally this was a really good year one of a rebuild, which I think is an interesting perspective to have, where he was like, this isn't really being talked about enough, where this is, the first time we're doing this. This is the beginning. And he's saying, like, inside of the organization, they took strides in ways that isn't possible to see publicly, but that he personally was very impressed with, especially coming from a prestigious organization like the Lakers to what the Wizards used to be. He talked about how they were, he didn't criticize the old Wizards regime, but he was like, the Lakers team was really good at doing this and that, and Washington was different. So it seems like he thinks that we're on the right path, which I think is good. And he said that kind of what everyone said, but he was very impressed with the clearly defined roles, and everyone's, it's not like you're not giving room to grow, but everyone's knows what's expected of them and what they want to see out of them. So it kind of empowers them to show that, because they know, like, hey, I really want to be good at this one thing, this one part of the game. He talked about how the trainers and coaches are better prepared. Everyone's roped into these communications where they're able to, like I said, kind of feel empowered, but all be on the same page more, where the coaches and trainers all get together. They say, hey, we want this player to get to this point, so these are the specific steps. We want the coaches and the injury or the medical staff and like Giannis said, the equipment managers, like everyone to get on the same page and really work towards this communal goal, which I think is a big step coming from obviously Ernie, but probably Tommy too, where it's like, this is where we want to get there, but we don't know the path. We just kind of have this goal, but we don't have the blueprint to get there. And it seems like Winger and Dawkins are really empowering these players and coaches to be like, hey, these are the specific steps we need to take. These are the specific goals we want to see out of everybody. And just kind of showing them, like, these are the ways that we can get there with individual players, with the player development coaches. And both Kuz and Winger Dawkins talked about how this is the first year of a completely new player development team. Like, pretty much they cleaned everyone out and replaced them. And just how impressed they were with both the coaches' ability to connect with the players and get the most out of them, and the players' ability to, buy into this and really do the work in ways that, might not have been evident in years past. Which I think, I've always thought that's one of the two major keys for a rebuild. Scouting obviously is the first one. You want to make sure you're able to recognize these good players no matter where you're picking. Especially in years like this, that's very important. If we end up with the first pick in the draft, I expect our scouts to be able to evaluate players well enough that, if we don't take the player that becomes the 100% best player in the draft, we at least take a player that's able to contribute and able to grow. Because we have seen drafts in the past where, that number one pick was not really able to do that. So I just really am pleased to hear that, their development's in a good spot where once we get those players, we're able to build on that foundation that they already have and really get the most out of them that they possibly could. Because that's what the good organizations do. That's what the Warriors were good at for so long. That's what the Nuggets are currently extremely good at, is recognizing these players late in the draft that can contribute, taking them and really building them into positive players on the court. And we have not seen that from the Wizards before. It's a common story where every draft pick we have, after they leave the Wizards, they get better. Kelly Oubre, I can't even think of any more because that's how bad of the players we've been drafting are. Our scouting has been so bad we can't even really develop what we have. Look at the last pick of the last regime, Johnny Davis. Even the improved player development coaches this year are not able to get anything from Johnny Davis. And our 2 picks this year with our new scouting department and development program are already paying out. Koulibaly's way ahead of where I personally thought he would be when they picked him last year. I'm going to be honest, I don't know the draft. I had no clue who Koulibaly even was. I was mad we didn't pick Cam Whitmore. But I've loved Bilal this year. We've talked about it every episode so far, just his improvement, what he's shown. And, we talked about it last episode, but what Tristan Vucevic was able to bring just, with limited minutes at the end of the season. I'm really impressed with the development so far of these young players that we've gotten. But I kind of got a little too narrowed into that. So I'm just going to, zoom out a little bit, just finish talking about Kuz's press conference. He was very impressed with Keith and just his ability to get the competitive spirit out of these players in ways that they were missing in years past, where we saw it constantly. Like, this old team would just give up sometimes and just be like, it's not worth it. And the last team that I thought really had that competitive spirit was that Westbrook team, where Westbrook he's always going to bring that for you. We're seeing with the Clippers. But some of my favorite moments later in the game to close games out came from Westbrook and that time where, everyone remembers that 6-point swing in that Nets game where we beat Kyrie and KD and Harden. And, that was my personal favorite game of the last however many years since Wall was here, just because they showed they wanted to win that game. They wanted to make that play, and they wanted to show the fans a good show. And it's been a while since we've seen that. And I think that's a really important part of coaching a rebuilding team. Look at the Pistons. Monty was not able to get any competitiveness out of them. They looked like they never wanted to be on the floor. Their body language was terrible in all those losses. And we've had games that looked like that, but I can't really think of that many of them after Keith took over. He was really able to get those players to buy in and be like, hey, we can't lose every game. We can't be the process Sixers. We need to build a winning culture. Otherwise, we're going to end up like the process Sixers. Like Embiid famously said, like, oh, trust the process. Like, winning doesn't matter right now or whatever. And I think that is a terrible mentality to instill into your players, because if they think the games don't matter, they're not going to play hard. They're just going to, phone it in and, get their paycheck and play just well enough to get extended or whatever. And it's like, if you're in this position where you need your players to step up and you're trying to build a championship core through the the right way, the draft, putting in the work, you need that competitive spirit from the very beginning.
Yeah.
So if Keith comes back, that's something I'd like to see from him. If they hire a new coach, that's something I'd like to see from them. And one of the things that just kind of wrapping up, I have a few more things I want to talk about with Kuz, but he said, like, I have to be a leader for this team besides just like the pace and scoring and everything. He's like, I can't go out and score 30 a night because, like, he was saying, like, I can do that, but that's not what's best for this team. Like, I need to lead, and
he can do that, just not on the best efficiency.
Yeah, and like, it wasn't like I can't do it because I'm not a good enough player, but like that's not the type of thing we want to set up. Where like I think he's really taking pride in leading a lot of these younger players like Denny and really helping them improve. And I think he knows, like, if, like, he saw it from LeBron, one of the greatest leaders in the history of the NBA, like, if we want to be good, we have to empower everyone else. I can't be the only one scoring everything. I can't be the only one doing stuff.
Right.
Which is a very mature thing to see from your leader. And I said this when I was watching the exit interview with you before we started. I was saying Kuz is already a better leader than Beal ever was. Like, he's taking the accountability to be like, this is my team. I need to help these players. I need to set the tone. Where Beal was just kind of happy to score and be like, yeah, you guys can figure it out.
Yeah. And I don't want to downplay Beal's leadership because it wasn't like as bad as people were saying, but Kuz is definitely taking a big step in that.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you want to end there?
Yeah.
That was pretty much all. Obviously, we had like Marvin Bagley, Johnny Davis, Anthony Gill, Landry Shamet, but I mean, they were kind of saying similar things.
Like, yeah, they really were. I'd be down to finish it out. I have one last thing I want to talk about with Kuz. He ended the interview by saying, by praising Winger and Dawkins for the type of environment they've been able to build, and he said, in our locker room, there's no drama. There's no pointing fingers. We're in it together. We win together. We lose together.
Which is pretty incredible for a 15-win team.
Yeah, exactly. I think they're like, you go to the Hornets locker room, I don't think it's the same thing, And I think that's an important part of the culture is like, we are owning these losses and we are proud of our wins, but when we fall short, it's not anybody's individual fault. We just need to play better as a team.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good conclusion. And I want to talk about kind of what's next for Tucked In Wizards, just because the offseason is coming up. Once the draft lottery comes around, we're going to do like a full mock offseason for every team. So we'll do a full episode for the Wizards and then like an episode for the East and West.
Yeah.
So that's coming up. I know Dawkins and Winger talked about people first, not player first mentality coming into the draft. So we definitely will not. We'll have our guesses, of course. I'm talking about fans as a whole. We won't know because we won't. We're obviously not going to see those internal interviews they're having. So I'm excited for the draft. I know it's supposed to not be the best draft, but hopefully we'll see a few productive players with it. And then I guess we'll figure out what else to do in the offseason because we won't have basketball to talk about.
Yeah. I think this is a big test for our front office where, like, this is where you need to prove yourself in a draft where there's no clear-cut good players.
Yeah.
If you're able to sift through kind of the rest of it, of the trash, kind of, and find the diamonds in the rough and, like, really be able to find a meaningful player in a draft where a lot of people are doubting not just, like, the top players, but all the players in the draft. Like, people are saying this is the weakest draft in however many years. So if you're able to find a contributing, meaningful player in that draft, I think that's very encouraging going forwards.
All right.
No Killian Hayes.
Please, no Killian Hayes. They won't draft Killian Hayes. That Killian Hayes this year is Zachary Rocher, who has been really, really bad at the end of the season, or at the end of his season. But I don't know. Maybe we could turn it around. Anyway, thanks for
I don't
watching.
know shit about the draft. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching, listening. Subscribe, and that's it.